Hi, and welcome to this panel on AI and the future of VFX. We're joined by Roy C. Anthony from DNEG, Jordan Souls from Rodeo FX, and Bruno Roy from Autodesk. So this panel is going to be on, conversation between all of us. I'll be asking some questions, just guiding the conversation. But first, I'd like to hear about you, what you're doing, your role, and maybe squeeze in a little bit of AI VFX stuff in there if you can in the introduction, right? So let's start with Roy.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really glad to participate in this. I did prepare a few slides, so if we get those up and ready. So basically, I represent DNEG, where I'm our global head of research. DNEG, if you're not sure who we are, we're a global award-winning visual effects and animation and stereo conversion company. We focus in on feature film, television, streamed media, augmented virtual reality, and experiential entertainment. So lots of application areas for AI. We have a collection of awards, which you can see there on screen. We have been leading cutting-edge visual effects for over 20 years, and since we opened our first studio in 1998, we've managed to expand to 9 studios worldwide. We leverage a strength that we have, which is a globally connected pipeline with a fully interconnected infrastructure that allows all of our teams to collaborate globally. A little bit about me. I mix art and technology together to create interactive and immersive experiences primarily. The majority of my career was as a designer, a solutions architect, and researcher, where I've contributed to the art of stereoscopic and high frame rate filmmaking, real-time technology applications in entertainment and industry, including AR, VR, and I hold several patents on machine-assisted imaging solutions and augmented reality solutions in these spaces. I joined DNEG to help us push forward further advances in real time throughout the pipeline, including virtual production, innovation and creature performance, as well as AI and machine learning and applications in these spaces. As part of the research functions in DNEG, we have participated with the University of Bath and Foundry on a project called Smart Roto, which is an AI-assisted solution for helping artists do roto tasks. We've also participated in research with Trinity College, Disney Research, Film Academy, and other contributors as part of the SOS EU project, where we developed an AI-assisted solution for smart assets, as well as advances in creature. So we're really interested to continue to explore these areas. So just a little bit of a plug, if you're interested in helping save the world from the evils of non-AI assisted, check out dneg.com/careers. Thank you.
What a great introduction and fantastic. Thank you so much, Roy, for joining us today. I think you're going to contribute significantly to the conversation here for sure. Especially interested in this automatic roto sculpting approach that you have, because we have very similar challenges in data annotation itself, because this is what we do at SAMA. So, maybe at one point, if you could explain to me what you did, would be great. Now let's move to Bruno from Autodesk.
Hi, glad to be here. Yeah, I guess a bit about myself. I caught the computer graphics bug during my engineering years. While completing my graduate studies, I spent many years conducting research on, I would say, the weird subject of particle-based liquids and all these physically based animation stuff, especially for VFX and how to improve them using super resolution and deep learning techniques. At Autodesk, I have the privilege to be involved in most of the research initiative combining machine learning with traditional computer graphics techniques. We're currently exploring many promising avenues leveraging machine learning with our M&E products. Of course, Flame has already ML feature available for image composition. We have a few in the pipeline for 3ds Max and Maya as well. And of course, it includes Bifrost, especially for physically based animation. Naturally, these are based on research trends and our customers' feedback. And yeah, right now I'm also actively contributing to improving collaboration between the production and many research and academic papers and universities. Our goal is to encourage collaboration with individuals, especially on both industry and academic sides.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Physics is, you said you started dabbling in physics. This is also something I'm really interested in, where I did my PhD. So it's great stuff. Particle physics brings us back in the days. And today, deep learning really accelerates those types of simulations significantly. So it's really cool. Jordan Souls from Rodeo FX. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I started my career in computational linguistics back in the early 2000s when AI was around but not really actively used, and AI has become a very, very big part of linguistics for sure. Eventually I moved to Los Angeles from San Francisco and worked graveyard shift at ImageWorks as a render wrangler at the time, which is a pretty low-hanging fruit job, but one that allowed me to see everything from the bottom and then take it all the way to the top. At which point I moved to Montreal because my wife lives here, and worked at a company called Bruno Roy. That was 11 years ago when we were about 30 people, and now we're about 600. But the company still feels like it operates like a company that's still 30 people working in the basement, and it's a very interesting way to work, and it's very kind of craftsman oriented in that respect, and it's a lot of fun. And every day is definitely a day where we attack problems that we've never really we never knew were going to hit us. So it's actually been quite a lot of fun in the AI space. What we've been leveraging has been not so much with respect to the imaging itself, but a lot with respect to trying to analyze a lot of the data surrounding how we render frames, how the organization of our teams are organized, and how efficient they are, when to utilize even things like cloud rendering or burstable rendering. I'm trying to see whether or not machine learning can take some of the heuristical gut ideas that we have in terms of how to organize a show and actually provide some means of data and some means of some means of data behind our gut instincts in terms of this is how we should run it. And we have also beginning to utilize it also in just our analysis of our network, just from a security perspective, to try to apply it in that respect as well. So we're a smaller company, but we're definitely utilizing it as best we can.
That's fantastic. Just a quick question, very personal, out of curiosity. What motivated you to go from computational linguistics to, going down in the basement and do that graveyard shift and start working in VFX?
I needed to find a job in Los Angeles. So my job was my wife is a doctor, and she was doing the doctor thing at a hospital there. But somehow I ended up with a pager because it was very important to know if Tom Hanks's eyeballs disappeared on frame 1202 in Polar Express. That was of the highest importance in comparison to what she was doing at a hospital. So in Los Angeles, at least, that's where things are at. Yeah, that's the bar. That's the bar that we aspire to. But yeah.
Great. So you've all been mentioning a little bit what you've been dabbling with AI. To what extent, this is what we're going to discuss. We all been at the symposium of AI recently, I think. Bruno, were you there? Because I think Roy attended, Jordan attended.
I wasn't there.
You weren't there. The feeling that I got from the symposium is that a lot of the studios were sort of saying, well, we're considering it, but it's too hard. We don't have the resources. We don't know when to use it. So I'd like to know, how long have you been working with AI? And what are the biggest changes the biggest measurable changes that it has brought, right? So has it had any impact? Or are you just playing around with it? I really would like to know if it brought some positive changes. Has it enhanced quality? Has it sped up some processes? You've been referring to that, of course, Jordan, right there. But now's the time to dig a little deeper and see if there were some measurable impacts of your usage of AI. So Roy, I mean, at DNEG, how long have you been using AI? What are the advantages?
Okay, so I'll just touch on a couple things that DNEG has done there. The two programs that I mentioned in my opening statement there, the sauce.eu project, which ran from January 1st, 2018 to the 31st of December 2020, was an investigation into looking at both smart assets and crowds. And this was an investigation to look at, you know, the potential for AI to help us classify and automate library activities. The second part of that was in and around crowds, trying to create crowds that had more self-directed agency. The additional project that I mentioned in collaboration with the University of Bath and with Foundry, Smart Roto. This was a program started in around 2019. Now, with the sauce.eu project just kind of closing in its research phase in 2020, we're really interested in currently evaluating the output of the research program to be able to see how we can apply those elements inside of our current production. The program with Smart Roto is still ongoing with respect to the research there. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that one, because the idea as to what this one is supposed to solve is unique, and it's close to my heart. It's the idea is that artists can be enhanced using an assisted machine learning solution. You know, creating shapes and across small sets of keyframes, and Smart Roto would effectively do the in-betweening tasks to sort of help the process of Roto, because Roto is a very, very labor intensive process, and it's, you know, and some people love it because they can go into a state of flow and they can just do the tracing and get the Roto task complete. And in other cases, you know, people don't particularly enjoy it. They want to focus on the artistry. So it seemed like a really great opportunity to deploy a machine learning tool in the VFX pipeline specifically for this task, for the artist assistant side. In the case of Sauce, it's around the problem statement that I'm sure every studio has, which is we generate a ton of data, and we have a lot of assets. And I know Jordan mentioned, like, he's even looking into analyzing how his network's performing. That's fascinating. I love that. But, you know, we're looking at it like we have these libraries that have to be created for data access and data recall, and trying to create a way of being able to delve into and sort this to be able to empower our artists to be able to get to what it is that they need from our libraries in order to be able to support their functions in a way that, you know, potentially could enhance the task a librarian would normally perform is an opportunity that's too good to chase down, right? It would just kind of enhance the overall production performance. The crowd agency side of the sauce, because against those two thrusts, that crowd agency side is about trying to create more realistic mid-ground and distant ground crowd agents, so that our artists can focus on the hero level and close to hero crowd assets, right? So this is all about enhancing performance, enhancing workflow, enhancing access to our data, and trying to empower us. Where are we with this? Because the research in some cases is still ongoing, in some cases the actual programs have just closed off and we're looking at the commercial applications phases. I would say that we're very excitedly engaged in and looking at, but we're currently not using internally.
That's interesting. It's interesting. Still lots of research from 2019 up to now. This is almost 2 years. And this is what we've observed too in our own spheres, that it takes a lot of time to actually understand how to use those tools and conduct the appropriate research to be able to measure the impact. That's quite interesting. I don't know if you have a take on this, Bruno. I mean, Autodesk, of course, is in the business of selling the software. So you probably have a strong incentive to try to squeeze in those machine learning, deep learning solutions right into the tools that you're selling as plugins or right inside the software itself. So, I mean, do you have experiences where you can talk about the actual positive change it brought to users, for instance, you know?
I wouldn't say to users in particular, but what I could add is the fact that Autodesk technology spans from a different spectrum of different, like expertise, like from architecture, engineering, construction, product design, and not just, of course, media and entertainment, but that's what makes working in AI at Autodesk exciting, because all these different groups are working with AI, are tackling, like, different technical problems that are kind of common in between these groups using the different technologies in ML, and this is where collaborating pays off. And in graphics, we benefit from all the available resources from a wide spectrum of expertise here. So as machine learning got more attention in multiple fields, working together has been pretty exciting these last years. And I would say that since my beginning at the Autodesk, I've been actively involved in most of the initiative and phases on leveraging machine learning for VFX. But as we are looking to provide data-driven solutions for a broad spectrum of users, our main focus with machine learning for VFX for now is to bring significant speed up that is transparent to users. And we're also, of course, looking into exploring various ways to bring value by offering additional features with our tools, but with problems that are hardly possible without machine learning. But those are still in the pipeline.
It's quite interesting. So, I mean, I get that there's lots of research happening at Autodesk, but are there measurable, tangible impacts now, or you're still? Are you saying also you're still at the research level? Although there is collaboration between all the members inside Autodesk, are you saying that it's mostly a lot of this is still at the research level?
It is still at the research level mostly. I know that Flame, for example, was an example of release product that already functionalities in ML and. But of course, there's a lot of data being collected right now with agreements with our customers to make that happen. But I would say that because we're looking into, getting a more generalized tool to our customers, it takes a bit more time, like to make sure that we're reaching needs of everyone on these tools.
Absolutely, Jordan. I mean, your take now. Has it brought some advantages, some measurable advantages now? Like, have you been able to measure this? I'd be interested to hear your take on this.
Well, I'm to be honest with you, I'm really excited about what Roy was saying, that a lot of the research that they're doing, and we've seen, certainly we're Flame users as well, so we've seen some of the outcomes that have come from Autodesk, but as well as outcomes that have come from Autodesk competitors like Foundry. And certainly even Side Effects, Houdini, another major manufacturer. It's sort of AI and machine learning will always have a big research component to it, primarily because it's really rarely a magic bullet, but it's sort of a bullet that's sort of aimed in generally the right direction, or what you hoped would be going in the right direction, that you hopefully can tune a bit more. But yeah, I mean, we see practical applications from it. However, once again, sort of when you say with some level of practicality, there's a percentage of it that will be right, and a percentage of it that doesn't quite work. I mean, we take actions on our network, for example, based on behaviors that we see, and it's not always right. But we hope that when it's wrong, that we basically tell the machine learning algorithm that it's not, this isn't, please don't do this again, and it'll do it again. But the number of times you tell it not to do it again, eventually it's like, okay, that's fine, I won't do that. So it's one of those things which it sounds really cool, but it actually there's a lot of reinforcement that is required, as well as there's just a lot, and I can't imagine the size of DNEG, the amount of data that they have to go through, that all of that data also, being able to organize it correctly, being able to take the actual relevant data that you feel is the most important and feed it in, like that as a skill in terms of being able to interpret the amount of data that you've got to be able to feed in, that's in its own sense a really important job, and a very difficult one, because it sort of implies that the person who's able to interpret the data as being important is an expert. and it's like, I mean, I'm sure these guys know, like it's an easy thing to say, I'm going to go throw machine learning at it. Oh, don't worry, we've got oodles of roto that we could just throw at it and it'll just come back and learn everything. But that's not really the case. It's actually quite a bit more complicated, and really you need to invest a lot of very, very expert people in, and so that's why I always feel like it's a bit of a research project, but it's a really cool one.
Absolutely, and I like that you finished with that. It's a very cool one, because I was going to ask as maybe as a next question, you know, what is the most exciting, since we all acknowledge it's a research, it's very researchy right now, AI and ML, DL, whatever you want to call it. But so then, what are the most exciting developments that you're observing right now in the VFX AI sphere, or just AI itself? And what's the biggest trend? What are you most excited about? What you find the most surprising, scary, maybe? You know, people are kind of scared. I don't know why. Maybe they've seen too many Terminators by now, but you know, people are scared about AI. Maybe, but I'm honestly not. You know, working in the field, you see it's pretty dumb, but you know, maybe we need to tell people. I don't know. Maybe you're scared of stuff in there. So yeah. So I just want to, you know, gauge a little bit your excitement. What are you looking for out there? You know, that you find really interesting. Anyone of you?
I'd be happy to jump in. The exciting development, like, again, I'm the research guy at DNEG, so the exciting development around AI is actually all the research, to some degree. And a lot of the things that Jordan was saying, and also Bruno, just in and around like these opportunities, it is for somebody who's savvy and is technically interested. It is a fantastic opportunity to join a visual effects company or a company that's supporting DCC tools, to be able to engage in this exciting era, because there's a lot of discovery to do. But I will say the developments that I've seen that for me that have excited me the most are the ones that have empowered artists, the ones that are introducing opportunities for play and directed experience by being able to play with AI, even if it outputs something a bit goofy. You know, in some cases is kind of enhancing the idea of going through variations in performance and being able to get to an end solution. There's an AI assisted solution which was covered in one of the last BCTQ sessions that you mentioned earlier on AI earlier in the summer there, and it was a solution that was posited by a Toronto company, and they're looking in at using audio to drive performance, where it's basically controlling a rig and generating the bulk performance, the phonemes of the character, to generate the correct lip positions in order to be able to get to that starting point, which is, okay, now the animation's roughed in. Now the animator can start doing the fun thing, which is actually putting that performance in place. The blocking part of that, it's laborious, and and again, just like with roto, you can get into a flow and you can really enjoy that. But wouldn't it be nifty if you could just inject audio in and get the performance into a place where you're now ready to play, you're now ready to, all the boring stuff's done, you're now ready to infuse your creativity into that blocked in session and be able to get to that next phase. I even look at some of the stuff like the AI to face that NVIDIA is doing, where again you have an opportunity to play. You rig your character, and it could be a dog, it could be a frog, it could be an actual human that's intended to not squash and stretch and represent physical accuracy. And you can start talking to your phone and do goofy things and make the character do that performance and mirror it back to you. And again, it's about play and discovery of creativity through play, and having computers assist you in that process is just such a wonderful gift. So being able to participate in creating those tools so that, you know, creative folks can continue to create and be inspired. This is just that classic, you know, engineering and science inspiring art. It's just that classic kind of yin and yang interaction. And it's amazing that AI is infusing that energy back into visual effects.
I actually love that what you just presented there, that opportunity, because I think that if you compare this to rotosculpting, I mean, rotosculpting is very precise work, right? You have to get it right. Whereas what you're talking about here is, it's okay if AI is statistically wrong once in a while, if I can keep pressing the button, or if I can keep having fun with it, and sometimes it gives me the gold nugget I'm looking for. That's right. Then we can work together collaboratively and come up with an interesting product out of it.
I'd say even if it didn't give you the gold nugget, like when you take a look at something like AI to face, or even AI to gesture, which was another one that I was kind of blown away by. Mm-hmm. The fact that you can just take an audio track, and I used to work in animated films, but the fact that you could take an audio track, a scratch audio track of somebody performing, and only using computation, only using the computer, be able to give you a version of a facial performance, or even a full body performance that, you're right, isn't 100% accurate. But the fact that you can get that just using compute time and not an artist time is remarkable.
Bruno, are you taking notes? I could see Bruno on the side there, like, just wait a minute, what can Autodesk develop there?
No, but seriously, I fully agree, especially when Roy said about, like, these are exciting times. I remember being jealous of the 90s, especially computer graphics in the 90s, because everything needed to be done at that point. You know, like, there was a lot of challenges, and when you go into that field around 2010, you realize that everything is photorealistic. Like, you know, like, getting something improved by a small gap is a lot of work, and you need to aim for something very specific. And I believe that AI is kind of to reuse, like, the words from Andrew Sanford, like, it's kind of you know, the electricity that will, you know, push again something very exciting, and a lot has to be done from there. And I also agree that AI tools to assist users is the way to go in the future. Probably, like, to plug the scariest thing that could happen with AI is the fact that people will be replaced, artists will be replaced, but the goal still to be, like, to just focus on the creative content. And with, you know, like, replacing, probably you saw, like, we presented in SIGGRAPH 2018 UVI, which was a solution to unwrap using machine learning, which is something very tedious and challenging for even skilled artists. And you don't have a single and unique solution for these. You can debate which unwrapping, which seams would be optimized on any 3D surfaces or models, but with some ways of doing iterative process with AI, you could provide, you know, like, a set of solution and then refine using the user input, which is something that I believe would be the future of these tools.
It's fun that you're all referring to almost like a concept of augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. I know Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, but actually the guy who's well known in the circles of machine learning is a big proponent of that, is that we should see those technologies as augmenting our capabilities rather than replacing us with an artificial intelligence. What does it mean, artificial intelligence, anyway? I really like it. I think that what you're saying is scary, like replacing. Let's talk about this just for a few minutes there. Like replacing the artists. Is that something we should be really scared of? I mean, I see the load of Netflix shows and the infinite hunger of people for all those TV series coming out now, all those streaming medias. It just seems to me like there would be more like a shortage of people working in VFX rather than having, like, if we could have technology replacing some of this work, we would still need people to do all of this, the VFX for all those shows. Is there a demand that can sustain employment? Is there really something to be scared of there, that AI could replace some people?
You know, I think I love this particular topic because for me, machines don't create art. People do. You know, machines are great at being trained to perform a task. And when you think about how actual machine learning and AI works, it requires training and it executes based on that training. Is there a future in the quantum computing universe of 2030 where I'll eat my words? Possibly, but I honestly don't think so. You know, and really what we're going to see is humans are going to continue to do what we do really well, which is tell great stories and to communicate complex ideas with vision and beauty. And the machine is there to assist us. This idea of assisted intelligence, I really dig, because that's what it is, right? It's a tool just like anything else. You know, Houdini introducing you know, a new NPM solver didn't, like, you know, completely eliminate you know, our ability to have folks that want to focus in on, you know, creating snow and sand and structure. The machine's not going to do anything with that. It needs to be told what to do and why, and given context. And through that, through the tools being used, you can create beautiful illustrative works of art. And, you know, this is a fundamentally human thing. I always think it'll be an assistive tool, just like visual effects and computer graphics augmented special effects. It didn't really replace it either. So, you know, I think it's just yet another tool in the toolbox.
Interesting. Jordan, the old computational linguist in you, do you agree that you can't have a machine computationally generate a narrative or a story just for the fun of it?
To be honest with you, you know, my job is to support the filmmaker and to support the creative. And we, you know, just like Roy and just like Bruno, like honestly, like for us, it's, you know, hundreds of artists. For Roy, it's thousands of artists. But really, it's like all of these artists really taking words on a page and turning that into an image on your screen. And at the end of the day, that's really it. And I kind of agree with Roy, although maybe I'll eat my words too. I don't think that's the type of thing that's easy to replace people with. However, I will say that there is lots of people doing work that is, let's say, fairly repetitive, and in that respect, there are definitely areas, even within the visual effects industry, that I actually hope get replaced with either better tools to allow it to be even more efficient, or even just purely computational, because then those artists could then move on to doing something else. So it's not a question, in my head, it's not a question of people losing their jobs, but actually people moving their career even further forward. Like Roy said, it's one thing that Houdini can create snow, but I've been on plenty of films where, you know, Zack Snyder is art directing snowflakes, and that's a difficult thing to have a computer on the other side of Zack Snyder being able to art direct that type of work. And so there's always I feel, at least in this industry, there's always a human component, and a human component at the end, either the director, a human component being the viewer, or a human component being the artist behind the screen, or even the human being the TD or systems engineer supporting all of the people within the studio. So it's kind of it's a fun time. It's a really exciting time to be able to use some of the tools from this field in a lot of different areas. But at the end of the day, yeah, I don't believe we're going to see a computer. I'm sure a computer could generate a script. I just don't think it'll be a great script.
Probably not. I agree with you for sure. I mean, you've said, you know, we're the ones controlling these algorithms. We train them. We use them for our own. They're augmenting, or they're realizing our vision, essentially. What if what if the person that's controlling the algorithm has nefarious purposes in mind? You know, it's inevitable. You know, you see me coming now. Every time we talk about machine learning, deep learning, we'll end up talking about the ethical use of those technologies. And you know, we've all seen those deep fakes, those really super realistic renderings of famous people saying things that they shouldn't say or they shouldn't have said. Do you see having this an impact on the VFX industry, on the adoption of deep learning in the VFX industry? Do you see something? How do you make sure that, for example, the models you're developing internally don't leak out to other people, or that the employees don't run away with them and start running them on their own RTX at home and just bam, generating deep fakes of whatever? So how do you see this this ethical conundrum there, the misuse of AI, basically? How do you deal with that?
I
was going to go to Roy, the researcher.
Oh, I was hoping somebody
Sorry,
else
Roy.
went first, but you know, so we're interested in looking at deep fakes for some applications, right? Like, so there's an interesting technology there, and we're interested more in how can it be used in a positive way? How can it be used? On the security side, I mean, DNEG's very careful about where and how we store our customers' assets. We're very security conscious, and it would be as everybody, even in work from home, works on secured workstations in facility. It'd be very difficult for somebody to get this out of studio, right? It'd be very difficult. So just moving that problem aside, you know, creating, using something that it can inherently empower people to create new and interesting creative solutions in a way that is undesired it's a choice that an individual might make, for sure, but we fundamentally can't control that. We can just put checks and balances in place to make sure it doesn't happen. I think if I think about how we might choose to use it internally from a creative standpoint, it would always be in and around the you know, what is the ethical thing to do? What is the best practice to do? So if we could think about something like bringing back an actor perhaps that passed and incorporating them into a filmic experience and leveraging something like the solution to be able to do that, I think with the correct permissions that could potentially be okay. But I mostly like to think about using this particular technology for good. So there's a documentary that came out this summer where they were interviewing a bunch of folks that were in a part of the world that restricts certain personal freedoms, and this documentary was about moving these individuals out of harm's way and into safety. It's a very authentic documentary, and going through this, they used this technique to augment and replace their faces so that they wouldn't be recognizable, but they could still perform and be filmed to allow the documentary to proceed. And that, I think, is an excellent way that this technology is being used. And while there will always be a bad actor somewhere applying technology in a way that they may have been better served thinking through their actions before they did them. I look to that particular example and other examples like it, where, you know, this technology is being used in a respectful way as something that is honorable, and something that I think that all studios would be inspired to want to achieve and enable. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take.
Excellent take, actually.
As Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility. Or was that Spider-Man's uncle? I forget.
I think it's Spider-Man's uncle. If we follow the story, but So let's just take a few minutes also. Like we're nearing towards the end of the recording, of course. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock. It's close for all of us. But let's take a few minutes to chat about expertise in AI, really. So now it's a very researchy domain. Researchy often means lengthy education before you can come to a point where you can do some research. So the workforce is probably scarce and very much on demand nowadays, actually, to do some research in AI. So how do you deal with this situation? How do you onboard people? What should people in school right now study if they're interested in joining one of your organizations and work on AI plus VFX?
I can jump in.
Go.
I know that in graphics, we usually prefer someone with a computer graphics background with an entry-level understanding of machine learning. As you said, like even though like there's a lot of researchers improving these techniques, usually we consider them as mathematics. Using these tools to improve what we're already doing. So that being said, we've also had in the past like amazing deep learning interns working on specific 3D projects, and they did like very great to understand like the background in computer graphics. And we absolutely also have in at Autodesk and the AI lab, which is more made up of several researchers like who work on more, I would say, fundamental aspect of data science and applied machine learning. So I believe that they already have right now like open roles in as a research scientist. But yeah, I would say that usually a very deep knowledge in computer graphics is a plus to understand what you're doing with these technologies.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. I also think, for the autodidacts out there who might be interested in kind of looking at it to figure out whether or not it's for them, definitely check out some of the open source programs that you can kind of look at and play with some working examples. The Pytorch project is one that's worth following, as well as TensorFlow. You're going to need a lot of Python, as it turns out. So what's weird is like one of the least performant languages is the one that's used in this high performance application. So that's weird, but getting some good Python chops, Python 2 and Python 3 chops, as well as getting familiarity with libraries such as NumPy and Pytorch, like I mentioned, in TensorFlow. Like these are little playgrounds that you can use to take your Python chops to the next level. Here at DNEG, a lot of our associate technical directors and pipeline technical directors will come in with a decent amount of Python as a fundamental background as well. So even if you're AI and machine learning curious, but you're strong in Python, you can always look to joining us and then maybe jumping on a program here to help grow your interest in AI a little bit further. In some cases, you might just be a data geek with some serious Python chops, and we can definitely get you to the next level.
What about your take, Jordan? Do you have anything to add on this?
No, Roy said it right. This particular industry is it's basically Python oriented, and even when you would want it to be C++ oriented for a bit more performance, it still goes right back to Python, and that seems to be okay. It's not that difficult a language to pick up, and again, to touch a lot on what Roy just said too, there's just so many ways in which to learn some of the libraries that already exist or that I used, and they're all generally speaking free. And then, DNEG is actually, all three of us represent companies that are members of the Academy Software Foundation, and that's an organization within our industry that's really promoting open source tools. As an industry, we're also very interested in making sure that a lot of what we work on works well together and can be developed even outside of our organization. So it's as a community, we're very open source oriented as well, which is actually very useful.
That's great. That's great. And you're right. I mean, the underlying code behind Pytorch is obviously high performance, Jordan. So no worry. You get back to C++ and C and even CUDA core, CUDA kernels for GPU. So I mean, you do have high performance go back on the back end side. And you can also, if you want to, program in C++, but that would be probably much tougher.
Of course you can. You got the Autodesk guy here. You could go back to Mel if you really wanted to.
Exactly.
To do that too. Sure.
Well, I think that wraps up all the little questions around this AI plus VFX. Any last comment before we wrap up the panel itself? Outro. Do you have an outro?
I might just say that don't be afraid of this technology. You stay curious. There are lots and lots and lots of problems that machine learning is very applicable to solving in and around the pipelines at a visual effects studio. Not all of it is about image manipulation. Some of it is stuff like what Jordan's doing in managing data and trying to extract useful information from data, or to automate processes that should be automated to enable the creativity of the other side of the team in visual effects, which are technology teams. Because after all, our software developers are creating something from nothing that's fundamentally creative, and our pipelines folks are helping tether together tools and technologies to enable creativity, and everybody along the chain can benefit from some of these tools and techniques. So stay curious, investigate, take a look, and see, maybe you can solve a problem with a machine learning solution too.
Excellent. I like the stay curious. Jordan, Bruno, anything to add on the outro? Because I think that's really hard to top here. I mean, Roy is doing such a fantastic job of wrapping this up.
I'm with Roy. Stay curious, and stay curious.
Yeah, I agree that providing the code helps a lot. I remember doing my PhDs and having to code these fluid simulation papers from scratch. Now, reviewers at SIGGRAPH, I'm not talking about researchers, but they're almost asking to have the source code to provide, like, to have a paper now. It's kind of a new policy, so that's getting very cool. Open society, like, to share. That's awesome. Even like when you provide data sets. So just be curious. Yeah, you got it.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining me on this panel. Jordan, Roy, Bruno, have an amazing evening. And hope we cross paths again.